Hello, I'm Dena Ladd, the Executive Director of the Missouri Cures Education Foundation, and our mission is to promote and protect medical research in the state. Thank you for joining us today. I am so excited. We have people in the state joining us. We have people around the country and a few even out of the country. So thank you. We're so happy that you're with us. 8 years ago, we started the Women in Science, Entrepreneurship, and Research Initiative, and it has been quite an honor promoting women around the state, connecting women. It's been so much fun. Today, we have a fantastic group of women who will be discussing strengthening your communication skills. And I would like to encourage everyone during the discussion, please feel free to submit questions in the chat box, and we'll incorporate those questions throughout our discussion and try to get to as many questions as possible. So let's get this discussion started. I'd like to introduce our panelists. Dr. Beths Prusasic. She is an instructor at Washington University School of Medicine. Catherine Jamboretz, founder of Tributary and principal of Jamboretz PR. Dr. Cheryl Watkins-Moore. She is the president and the CEO of the YWCA Metro St. Louis. Shaylee Yant, marketing and events manager for BioNexus KC. And Dr. Ricky Henry, program manager for the Center for Emerging Technology. Welcome, ladies. Okay. I'm going to have all of you, good, unmute yourself.
Hi, Dena. Thanks for having us. Hi. And hi to everybody out there.
I know you're a chatty bunch. I'm like, whoa, there's silence here. What is going on here? Okay. So thank you again. I know how busy you all are, and I'm so excited to have you with us today. So better communication and public speaking gives women the ability to seize every opportunity and meet their full potential. Whether pitching for new business, delivering a talk at a conference, raising money for a nonprofit, or communicating one-on-one, women can become a powerful force when they speak authentically and with confidence. So we are so excited to hear what you all have to say about communication skills today. So give an example of a time where you were speaking to a crowd and you had stage fright. How in the world did you overcome this fear? Catherine, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, so this is good. So I was a live reporter, and one of the first times I came out of the field to anchor, my teleprompter went down on morning news, and it was just like blank. And you just panic and you think like, I'm going to totally crash and burn. And so it taught me that I always need to be in command of what I want to say. So it's really something I've carried through in my message training throughout the years, which is, if you know what you're talking about, so this happens to everybody all the time, right? The PowerPoint goes down, the AV isn't working, your script gets jumbled around and the numbers are wrong. But if you know the message you're trying to deliver, then you can always like take a breath and like be like, hey, PowerPoint's not working. So anyway, here's what I'm here to talk about today. So I think never memorizing and never leaning on technology, just hoping that technology works. But if it doesn't, being able to go on with what you wanted to present.
That is fantastic. We're having a few audio problems, and I think I love it. This is what I love about these WISER events. Everyone chips in and tries to help each other if you're having technical problems. So I think there's some advice in the chat box on audio.
I may need to take the headset off.
Yeah. I think you're good. I think you're okay.
Catherine, I can hear you just fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Beth, what about you?
Yeah, when we were discussing this a couple of weeks ago, folks were saying how they don't really get stage fright anymore, and they can just sort of go up and wing it and feel confident. And I aspire to be that one day. But if there are folks in the audience who still get stage fright and anxious about public speaking, I've got you, because I still get that way, and I don't know if that I ever won't be that way. And the thing the way I've learned to overcome it, or at least get through it, is to prepare and over prepare, because I know when I'm in the moment, even if I've practiced over and over, I'm going to get anxious, and I'm going to sort of just go through the motions and not really be as present as I want to be. So I practice a lot so that when I go on autopilot, I'm saying the things I intended to say. I've got my core messaging there. I've got sort of the 3 or 4 phrases that I always want to return to. And that gets me through any stage fright, is knowing that I'm as prepared as I'm going to be. I've got sort of those 3 or 4 sentences memorized that I can return to if I forget where I'm at or forget what I'm saying. So I think it's okay to still over prepare if you need to, and to be nervous and to be anxious and to have your notes. There's no shame in that if you still need those things.
You know, there's also this myth that presenters are just born great presenters, which is just not true. If you look at the best speakers, they're the ones who practice incessantly. This was true of Steve Jobs. People thought like that was second nature to him, but he would practice those Apple innovation demonstrations for weeks, and he'd test them out on his employees, and he'd test them out on strangers, and he'd get better at them. And so I think this dispelling this myth that some people are just naturally good at that would help everyone, because the more you practice, like the better it gets.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I would agree.
Cheryl, what do you think?
No,
Yes.
it's funny because for some of us that are on this call, we're a little bit more seasoned, not our experience, or older, right? Let's put it like that. And you know, early on in my career, it was like that. I was like, oh my God, you want to make sure that you have every word that you want to say. And I came up through a big healthcare organization, Baxter Healthcare, that sent you to like media training and speaking and all of that. And it was very interesting because the one of the first classes that I went to, they tape you doing like a speech or whatever. And what they show you when they play it back is how many times you're saying, and you don't even realize it until, you know, you get that drilled in your head. It's like, you know, you don't have to fill the space with words. Sometimes it could just be silence. And I think what's also interesting is depending on where you're speaking, like if you're doing a presentation and you're, of course, having all of your points, your bullet points that you want to have, so you get your message across, and you get through it in the time frame that you have to get through it. I think that is extremely important. I think what's different is when you're doing an investor presentation, because you can have your content down, but if anybody has done a presentation or has engaged investors, you know they're going to interrupt you throughout your presentation. So making sure that you still have clarity of thought, but that you're able to answer the questions that they have and come back to what your point is that you're trying to get across. So it's a different type of, I call it song and dance, that you have when you have someone that's really, you're not doing a full-fledged just presentation and getting all your information out. You do have that back and forth question answer. So I think it's a different way to prepare. And just be confident. Yeah.
Thank you. So there's certain behaviors that can hold women back from having successful communication skills. And one is that women often strive for perfection. But being perfect makes it difficult to engage or really connect with your audience. One way is to be authentic. How do you ensure that you are authentic, and what other ways do you engage and connect with your audience? Shaylee?
Yeah, so what I really strive to do is speak on topics that I truly believe in and that I'm passionate about. If someone wants me to speak about something that I'm just not passionate about, I will politely decline and try to offer maybe someone else who might be more passionate about that topic or believe in that topic. But I think there's that passion really makes speakers more confident, and it makes you really more engaged and connected with your audience whenever you have that confidence and the knowledge. And like Katie said, you don't have to rely on your presentation or your prompter because you're passionate about it, so you can speak about it.
Katie? or Catherine.
Well,
Sorry.
it's all either way. It's everything. So I've trained a lot of people, and I find this in almost every woman I train is that it's a human thing. We feel like we've got a lot to prove, and we feel like we have to prove that we deserve to be in the room. What that does to our communications is that we feel like we have to overload you with information. Like, I'm standing up here and I'm going to prove to you that I am an expert in my field. And so I want to tell you from my heart, like, if you got invited to speak at that event, you are already the expert in your field. You are already worthy of being there. And so what helps is to really invert that idea of putting all the information up top. The most basic communication skill is to really get your audience that why at the top, and then you can prove it out with points. But in those first few seconds, 10, 15, 20 seconds, give them that why of why you're up there and why you care about this and why it's your passion. And then you can prove it out with data, but start with the why you're there.
That's great.
And just always have confidence that you wouldn't be there unless you are the absolute best person to speak on that.
Yeah. Cheryl?
I was going to say, it goes back to, I think, what we talk about confidence. Women, and I've seen it in pitch competitions. I've seen it when we pitch our companies. We want to, how do you describe it? We want to have our I's dotted, T's crossed, everything perfect. Okay. And I've seen the flip side in our male genders, partners that are out there presenting. And it's with an air of confidence that they speak. It's with an air of confidence that they are delivering messages. And sometimes I see it in women who have all the right things in place, but they lack the confidence, and it comes across in how they present information and how they present themselves. So it just goes back to, being, I think what Katie said is that if you are asked to speak somewhere and you are asked to present information, it's because you are the expert there. And you need to carry yourself like that, because you might be on a panel like we're on a panel, but we're talking about different things. But maybe it's a panel where you're presenting data and somebody has a differing opinion, so being able to have that conversation without being shut down or feeling like you're being, if somebody has that differing opinion that, well, I don't want to say something that's different from what they're saying. No, you have a voice, and you should use it, and you have the knowledge and I believe you have to come to the table with confidence. But it takes sometimes as you're building your career to really to build that air of confidence as well.
Yeah, I love that. And there's some really great advice in the chat box. I love Amber was talking about how she practiced using a tape recorder, and she could hear the ums and the ahs, and so thank you for that. And also Joan mentions Toastmasters. It's a great place to practice your presentation skills. So thank you. So what advice would you give to boost stage presence or charisma when speaking? Ricky?
Thanks, ladies. All of that stuff is just good. So even just audience, just to let you know, like, even though we are experts in our field, we still experience some of these things. So thanks for putting all that together. But one thing that I would say to boost stage presence and charisma when you're speaking is just engagement. Sometimes stories, that helps to kind of lessen the blow for yourself. And I always state that in the first 7 seconds of any conversation, you really, really, really need to make sure you grab the attention of the audience. Because if you don't, at that point, the conversation goes mute. So you have to be really, really, really careful of your beginning statement to make sure that you're really grasping the audience. Also, make sure that you're authentic in your message. Don't just use stories that somebody told you. Actually use real stories. Like if you don't use real stories, like people know, you don't know who's in the audience. They could just say like, she's not telling the truth. All these made up things. People do it all the time. So just don't do that. Don't make up stories. Really, really be authentic, be truthful, because your integrity means everything when you're speaking. And then remember, you don't know who's in the audience, right? You don't know if a doctor, a lawyer, and when you use all these statistics that you really don't know about, people know that you're not truthful. So be truthful and be brief and intentional, always. The in the African American community, in the Black church, they say, be brief, be good, and be gone. So do all of that.
I love it. Oh my God, that's great. I want to encourage everyone that's joining us today, welcome, and please put your questions in the chat box and we'll try to get to as many as possible. So the next question I'm going to direct to all of you because I think it's an important one. Whether conducting a media interview, making a sales pitch, you need to articulate your organization's vision and accomplishment. And so what is the best way to do this? And Beth, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, so as somebody who doesn't normally represent her organization, as I will say every time, my thoughts are my own and not representative of WashU, but I often am representing my own research and my own work. And as a former journalist myself, I've sort of been on both sides of the interview, and I know what they are looking as a journalist. I know what a journalist is looking for out of the interview, and that's typically a 30-second soundbite or a really nice encapsulated quote that they can lead with their story or sum up their story with. So when I'm preparing for an interview, whether it's print or audio or on TV, I will, again, going to my earlier point, I will jot down those sort of 30-second sound bites or those quotes that I know I need to get in because I want to direct them to what they're looking for. If you don't do that, they will pick something out that perhaps you didn't intend to be your main point, and they'll run with that. And I as a former journalist, I have all the sympathy in the world for that job and how hard it is. And so I don't think that they try to choose the wrong things, but if you don't direct them, they will make, their own assumptions on what's the main point. So I think having little 30-second clips prepared in your mind and summary statements ready to go that aren't technical, that are, again, think about who's the audience. If I'm trying to sum up my research, I'm not going to use the final line of my grant application or my paper that I wrote for a scientific audience as my 30-second spiel. I'm going to come up with something that is more understandable to a lay audience, and that is more personal, and that is something that people will resonate with. So I think having all of that stuff prepared and planned also helps with the stage fright. If you get your words jumbled, just sort of go back to the things that you've memorized. Those will be the things that hopefully the journalist will pull out for their piece.
Love it. Ricky?
Sorry, I'm on mute. With making sure that you have media, and have your pitch all together, I think I would start with your value proposition, really giving the audience the reason that you're there or the reason that you're speaking, because that are what you're striving for. Because if you're an entrepreneur or if you're an investor, people really want to know one fundamental thing: why do I want something that you're selling, buying, or why do I want to invest in what company? So really start with your value proposition, and then you can start to move around, like what is the customer segment. You really use the whole, and I'm talking from the entrepreneur standpoint, the business model canvas. You really start from that, dissecting what you really want out of the piece. If it's a conversation, if it's a business, if it's financing, you really find that out. You really are able to test the assumptions. You're really able to go out to find out what is needed and what's wanted. So start with a value proposition, and you usually can find out what anything you know or anything you need to tell from your organization.
Yeah, great advice. Shaylee.
So I'm just going to echo kind of what Beth said, that I am all for the media and have all the sympathy in the world for journalists, but you really want to make sure that you speak clearly and concisely. Don't answer questions that you were not asked, because if you offer too much information, they will have to slice and dice what you say, and it might come across in a way that you don't intend for it to. And again, I say that with all the love and appreciation for the media, but you just want to make sure that you answer questions you are asked in a very concise way.
Catherine?
Well, I would say also coming to this, like Beth as a former journalist, I'll tell you a few really easy tricks of the trade, and that is repeat their question. That's actually what they're looking for. They don't want their voice in the question. So if they say, why should the ordinary person in your community care? Like, the way you answer that is, here's why the ordinary person should care. And then go to your home-based message. And if your home-based message is, that one sentence, that we just heard is the one thing you want them to hear, then you'll keep repeating it. And you can repeat in every answer. Like, don't be afraid of being repetitive. That's the whole thing. Reporters don't care. And if they care, too bad. It's your time on camera. You don't let them throw you off track. You're right. Don't let them get you talking about stuff you didn't plan to talk about. So repeating that question and then going into your answer will really, really help when you watch that story. Like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to say. And then one of my best training pieces of advice is don't be afraid to just shut up. I mean, this is, we have all done this, where you're on a train of thought and then you start rambling and you're like, well, how did I get here? What's going on? Just stop talking. Just literally stop talking. It's fine. They'll say, do you want me to ask that question again? Or you can say, can I rephrase that? Or that didn't come out right. But it just allows you to put a kibosh on it. Honestly, it's probably going to be too long of an answer for them to use anyway. And then the next time you do it, it'll probably seem real concise.
That is great advice. Just shut up. I love it. And also, they always say, go back to your box, the one media box you have. Like, when I find I'm rambling with an interview, I'm like, so, and the point is, and the reason I'm here, but if you just kind of go back to the box is what I've always, but Cheryl, what do you think?
I think everybody has summed it up nicely. It's funny when Shaylee was talking about, only answer the question. My sister is an attorney and she has me cracking up. She's like, you never give anybody more information than they ask. Okay. So that's number one. You only answer the questions unless you feel like this is part of your box statement, and I totally agree. You should have your 30-second elevator pitch with the points that you want to get across. And to me, I agree with Katie, is the repetitiveness of those points. And you can always use examples of how, those points shine with the message that you're trying to get across. Because I think the media, they want to hear about not just the numbers, as what I tell my team here from a marketing perspective. It's not about the number of people that you serve. It's the impact that you have with the resources that you're utilizing to serve these folks. So it goes back to, making sure that you understand what you want to get across. And that comes from just training of how you want to convey your message. And they might throw in a curveball, but being astute enough to know that, you can always take that curveball and take it right back to the message that you want to have. So, and I love the point, we talked about this before, is if you find yourself talking more than you want to, you just shut up. You stop talking.
Yeah. And you can hear yourself doing it. It's like, oh my goodness, this is not good. But I do love the question in the chat box. How do you deal with interrupters?
Mm-hmm.
You know, as you're trying to talk about your message and you're having an interview or even a one-on-one, what do you do? So who would like to answer that?
I think if you talk about, especially in the VC, like I said, if you're pitching for a company or if you're pitching for a business, that is quite common. That is very, very common, that you can start off your presentation and you know exactly what you want to say, and you have somebody that is going to interrupt because they're trying to get more information. And typically investors are very impatient. They're not going to sit there and listen to you for, 30-minute presentation. Most likely they've heard it before. They want to know, how are you different? Why are you different? Who's your competition? Who's your market? And why should I invest in you? So if you have that in the back of your mind, that you know that these are some of the key things that they want to know, those interrupters, if you have those answers, you can quickly give them those answers and then get back into the discussion that you want to have. But that is a skill, being able to lead that discussion where you want it to go, and not being caught off guard or going down a path that you're not intending to go. So I would say, if you're in a situation like that, I would definitely make sure you're practicing with someone your message. Make sure that you're in control, so you look confident and that you're in control of that conversation. Because the worst thing to do is, and everybody, you're not going to know the answers to every question. And if you don't know it, you just say, I don't know it, but I will get that answer back to you. And please do not ever make up information. Don't ever make up data. Don't ever make up, because just like I think Ricky or somebody on the panel said, people will know, and you don't know who's in that audience, and they might be waiting for you to make a misstep like that, because that tells an investor everything they need to know, or anybody, anything they need to know about you. First of all, it's your integrity and your character. So those are the things that you can control. Those are the things that you should control.
And that goes into really the next question, Cheryl. What you were saying is, how do you make a compelling pitch to investors or community leaders, whether one-on-one or to a group? And Ricky, I'll throw that to you.
I would say you should really start out kind of getting attention and get them hooked, like really get them hooked on the message or what you're trying to deliver or what you're trying to sell. In the case of entrepreneurship, you would really want to tell them, try and get them involved in what your business idea is, because something compelling will have them to remember you, right? And then remember, once again, 7 seconds. That's all you have. The first 7 seconds, that's how you draw them in, and then keep them hooked, keep it compelled, and definitely keep it short.
Mm-hmm. And so Shaylee, working with at BioNexus KC, you work with business leaders and so forth. So what would you say as far as making that compelling pitch to people?
Yeah, I think it's really important to research your audience if you have the opportunity, even if it's just a quick Google or LinkedIn, and just try and get to know them a little bit so that you can connect with them. And also researching the audience, you're going to understand better if you need to speak in layman's terms, or if they know a little bit about the organization or the area you're speaking in, that you can do a deeper dive. But if you have the opportunity, you really want to research and know who you're speaking to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so Cheryl, as far as nonprofits go, what would you say as far as that compelling pitch?
Well, it's interesting, like going back to who's your audience, who are you speaking to? If it's a donor, what is it that you want them to know? If it is a client that you're serving, how is that message different? If it's an internal audience, employee, how is that message different? The message might be the same, but how you deliver it to those different audience segments are very different. I've been in marketing for like 1,000 years. Okay. And one of the things that you clearly, before you go talk to a customer, because I used to travel with my reps a lot. And I said, number one, I never want to do a cold call. Number two, I want to go to customers that we have great relationships with and bad relationships with, because I want to understand, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And I would say, listen more than you talk. If you're talking more than who you're interfacing with, that's a bad thing. You want them to engage with you. You want to listen to what interests them, and then be able to provide information that supports why. We talked about why. I always say, why the why. Why should you be involved with our organization? What makes it, what is a compelling message for you, so that I can bring you on to support our organization? But I can only know that if I do my homework about what are you interested in? What is your organization interested in supporting? Why would we have this conversation and tailor the conversation to those needs?
I love that you brought up listening skills, because that is such an important part of connecting with people. And I don't know, I do my little cheat sheets after I meet with people. I'm like, okay, has a son in college, da, da, da. So, the next time you're like, so how's your son in college doing, Right. But it really makes, I think, a difference, because people feel a little bit more connected with you and stuff. But
and then, Dena, in the real world of reporting, what happens a lot, and I have seen this so many times, is that, the people you're interviewing, and I'm talking like really established CEOs, like really phenomenal leaders, they get so focused. I think they're memorizing. I think they're like, they've been giving their marching orders, and they're going to so deliver that, is they don't listen to the question. So like interrupters, reporters, your audience, just take that minute to listen to the question. It sounds really simple, but you can still get your message in, but listen to the question, answer it truthfully, and then wrap in your message.
I don't know if y'all can tell I'm taking notes here. This is really good stuff. Like, I'm taking notes here. But that's so important, and not to feel rushed. I don't know, but sometimes we feel rushed when we're talking about, interviewing, and it's like, well, wait a second, deep breath. Okay, now I'll answer that question, and so forth.
Can I interrupt here too, just to say,
sure.
I think that once you meet with people, this is just a pet peeve of mine. If somebody took the time to meet with you, always send back a thank you email or something that acknowledges that you appreciate their time. I don't care who it was, with an investor or another colleague or whatever, because that just, again, it talks about your character. It talks about, how you engage with people. I think going back to Dena, talking about, if I know your kid is in school, I'm going to remember that. And that draws people, I think, to a deeper connection than just some very superficial, colleague to colleague type of conversation. But please, some of the etiquette, I would encourage, making sure that you acknowledge that people took the time to talk to you. And that you acknowledge that. You don't have to do that with the reporter. That's their job. But but other people, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And thank you, because it's like those notes, and my Southern mother was like, you write those handwritten notes. But now I question, like, are they going to get this note? Wait, is their assistant going to read it and throw it away? So I think it's okay to do just an email, right? Yep. Thank you. Okay. I'm glad I'll tell my mom that, because she's always
I know, the funny thing is, with people being out of the office, is I thought of writing a handwritten note. I'm like, I don't know if they're even going to pick it up for a month. Right. So I think in this weird world we're in, like the more you can just be direct in a text or an email, quick thank you, it means a lot.
Yeah. I totally agree, especially if they've bought your lunch or something. Make sure you say thank you.
I think it's just about trust too. I think when you do those types of things, people really feel more connected and they trust you. They trust you as a professional. They trust you as a colleague. They trust you as a person that they can particularly lean on or, you know, have a relationship with. So it's trust as well. You develop trust. And I'm, of course, speaking from the entrepreneur world, that is one thing that's big. You trust. To trust somebody, you really have to stay engaged. So, and I notice that.
I love it. And somebody put in the chat box, I love this. E-cards are a great resource. Loves handwritten notes, so it's an alternative. Wow, e-cards. I got to get on that train. That's good.
That's a really, really good idea. I like that idea.
Yeah, I love that. So now we're going to talk about storytelling that can play an important role in public speaking. I find this personally tough. I think you have to come across kind of natural as you're telling your story. So how do you keep the audience engaged and sound sincere if you're storytelling? Catherine?
Yeah, sure. This is the wiring of the human brain 101. Okay. Like raise your hand if you want to go watch a PowerPoint. Nobody wants to watch a PowerPoint. Why? Because your human brain is trained. It is wired in the deepest parts of your brain to go, whoop, because it's not storytelling. It's my favorite, like little some e-cards is like, welcome to my presentation. I'm going to read it verbatim. Like, they are there to see you present. They are not there to read your PowerPoint. So this is human brain wiring. Okay, so you're at a barbecue on a weekend and you tell your friend, oh my gosh, did you hear Dena's got this great new company? And here's what it's going to do. Isn't that cool? And they walk across the barbecue and they tell somebody else and they relay it almost verbatim. Why? Because it was a story and you were animated and you were using everyday language. But then when we get back into that corporate speak and we use a lot of acronyms and we use a lot of encoded language, people just that we go back to that Monday morning and we talk about like, how do we utilize stuff? And we call stuff SEO instead of Google search, and people just tune it out. So if you can tell stories that illustrate what you're trying to get across, people will absolutely lean in and remember what you said. And that's the whole point. You just want them to remember the why. They want to remember why you were there. So use those stories, really find fun anecdotes that really color the story, and it'll be memorable.
Any other advice on storytelling? Because again, I think this can be difficult, especially, you know, when you're doing a presentation, it's just got to come across smooth. So
I will add, as somebody who comes from the world where PowerPoints are a must, like I could never show up to a research presentation and say,
Yeah.
PowerPoint today, I'm going to just tell you about my work. I do try to I spend way more time on my slides than I do on what I plan to say. And try to make the slides visually interesting and beautiful and use pictures. Depending on the audience, I will use GIFs. I will try to have something visual other than bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, fact, percentage, statistic. I will try to weave in whatever I can to make it more interesting. I often, if it's a presentation that's sort of not about a particular study, but about my general field of research, I will always try and lead in with a story. I often, to your point, Dena, about trying to make it natural, I use my own story and my own life history as part of why I do the research that I do. And it both helps obviously make the case for why I'm the person to be doing that research and to be speaking on that topic. But it, I think, makes people understand that this is a connection that I have to this work and that I'm hoping that they will have as well, and trying to sort of say, hey, I know not everybody comes from the place I come from. Let me share that with you so you understand why this is important. So I think even people who don't have a personal connection to the thing that they're speaking on, if you can find a way to find that with the audience and let them know. That's, I think, the best way to lead into the PowerPoint that has the percentages and the facts, because I can't get rid of those.
Yeah, and honestly, like, I mean, I take a deck wherever I go, but the way I think of it is it's there to back you up, not the other way around. You're not there to support the deck. Like, the deck is there to illuminate what you're saying. And then another thing I think is helpful is you can also think of a takeaway deck that, you know, maybe there's something that people take with them that is much more detailed, that they leave that presentation with, that is not on the screen as you're talking. Because I just always worry, is it taking away from the words and the meaning?
Yeah, I wrote that down too.
One really important part of storytelling is kind of echoing what Beth said, is to be personal whenever you are presenting, even if it's just for 7 seconds, and a little bit vulnerable. You don't need to share your deepest secrets, but tell them something that maybe they didn't know about you or wouldn't know about you, that kind of makes them feel that sense of trust. Like, oh, they trust me enough to share this tiny tidbit of information. And I think that really comes across as authentic and sincere.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. So what are some tips for preparing for a speaking engagement or presentation? Catherine?
Well, I mean, I think practice. I mean, I think that's really it. Always, especially if you're doing virtual, like, test it out before, make sure the lighting changes depending on your room, make sure you have somebody in the room listening. Does my mic sound okay? But I think being able to practice and feeling like, you know, your command of the presentation, that if everything went down, you could still be okay.
Yeah.
One other fun thing. Okay, so we're talking about the brain and how it likes stories. You know what the brain also likes is metaphors. Okay, so think of there was a great one that came out during COVID. Remember the beginning when everybody was like, wash your hands, gotta wash your hands, gotta like really wash your hands. And there was this fantastic woman who was a really great public health person on the East Coast, and she said, "How about this? Why don't you wash your hands like you just chopped a jalapeno and you have to put your contacts in?" Right? You do not have to say use hot water. You do not have to say use a lot of soap. You do not have to sing happy birthday. You totally get it. It's encapsulated in that visual, and there's no more explaining needed.
Love it. So Cheryl, what would you say about tips for preparing?
Well, you know, if I'm asked to speak someplace, I want to know who's the audience. I want to understand, you know, what is it that you want me to deliver content wise, so that I can start to outline what the content is. That's what I do first, is start to outline content. And then what's the supporting information? I mean, if it's a technical type of presentation, or if it's just something where, you know, maybe I'm speaking with middle school girls, you know, on careers or something like that. With my presentations now, and I know there are different types of presentations, even with investor presentations, I try to use less words on a slide. I try to be more visual with the slide, because if you put all your bullets that you're going to say on that slide, nobody's going to listen to you. They're going to be reading those bullets instead of listening to what you have to say. Now, you might put 1 or 2 key messages that you want on the slide, but I think if you are more visual with what you're trying to get across, I think we're going back to Katie, it engages them to be, oh, okay, here's something I can look at up here, but I'm listening to what you're saying and to see how this ties in to the visual that's being shown. So for me, it takes, and it depends on, always ask, how long do you want me to speak to?
I like Q&A too. And here's the reality of the situation, is that what didn't exist to people who came before us is these tiny supercomputers in everybody's laps. And once you lose an audience, like, they're down, they're in their phone, they're checking email, they're looking at social, and it's hard to get them back. So just that respect for the audience, like, hey, I'm going to take you on a journey. Cheryl said, she tells people where they're going. That's a really real brain trick, what's called signposting. Hey, here's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to talk to you about presentation skills. And along the way, I'm going to tell you how the human brain works. I'm going to tell you why encoded language makes people tune out. And then at the end, I'm going to show you how the storytelling is going to really help get people to repeat your story. And so you kind of show them what you're going to do, and you just tell them how you're going to get there, and then you do it.
Mhm.
Oh, wow. I love that. That is one thing. I mean, virtual's been great. Like, today we have people all around the state joining us, but when we were doing our in-person WISER events, the Q&A played a really important role in those events. I mean, we had all these questions from the audience, and it was this great dialogue, informal dialogue between the audience and the panelists, like we were sitting in someone's living room, having a glass of wine together or something, but it was really nice. And then after the event, usually those conversations continued, the networking. And so the Q&A can be really important. So I'll remind everyone, if you have a question, put it in the chat box. It's not quite the same, but so Beth, what about you for tips for preparing to speak?
Yeah, Cheryl mentioned the one I always need to know if somebody says, can you present from 12 to 1? I need to know, how much time do you actually want me to speak? How much time do you want me to leave for questions? Are you going to be introducing me? Or, that otherwise, if I'm thinking I have an hour, I'm going to decide how long I'm going to speak and how much I'm going to leave for questions. And that's going to depend on my mood and what else I have going on that week. So I want very specific instructions about sort of how long, what do you want from me for that hour? Because it helps me prepare, and it helps the person who's asked me to present get what they want and what they are expecting. I think nothing's worse, and I think we've probably all been on presentations like this where it's already overtime. The person is still speaking. They have no idea they've gone over. There will be no Q&A. And it just, I can tell that it's frustrating to the organizers and the hosts. And I think then the speaker feels bad when they look up and realize time has passed and they've gone over. So my number one thing is figuring out exactly how long. And then I will practice. I will run through to make sure what I think is 45 minutes of slides and of talking is actually 45 minutes and not 55 minutes or 25 minutes. So I think the timing is really important when you're doing presentations to make sure that you keep yourself and the event on track.
And I'm going to say another point. So working with researchers who I love, and they have amazing, their work is amazing, trying to find cures for cancer, diabetes, but I have to remind them to take it down a level, take it down to maybe a 6th grade level or something, depending, because we get a lot of just general public coming to our research symposiums and so forth. And so it's important that everyone understands kind of what they're talking about and so forth.
Know your audience, because you know how to speak to them and what the content and also not just the content, but how to deliver that content that's effective, that they receive it. Yeah.
It's so easy to fall into that jargon too. I would actually take a red pen to the script and just use fresh eyes and say, am I using words here that my audience knows?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I using words that are industry specific? Am I using acronyms? Can I spell it out instead of using that acronym? We just get so used to using those acronyms. I worked in government for 8 years, and my goodness, they love an acronym. They will shorten anything to 3 letters, and it's easy, right? It's like they're trying to get through the content, but what that does to your brain, if you say an acronym that somebody doesn't understand, they say to themselves, like, I'm dumb, I didn't get that. Now they're talking about stuff I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or you're saying,
or they just feel they're in the wrong room. Like I'm in the wrong presentation here. We interview a lot of scientists and researchers as well at BioNexus KC, and I love talking to them and hearing their research. But I think it's a little helpful that I don't have that intense science background, because they're using jargon that I have no idea. So I have to just knock it all the way down. Are you talking about the head or the feet? Because and it's like you see a light bulb go off, because to them it's everyday language. They can do it with their eyes closed. But to me, it's like, I need you to just tell me specifically in terms of a 4th grade level what you're talking about. So
Yes.
And can I just say, because even you can be sitting in a scientific presentation, but just grounding everybody with the acronym first and because you don't know who else is sitting in that room. And it could be another scientist, but guess what? Maybe, the acronym ADD means something different in what they practice. So by using, you're going to use the acronym, first spell it out to say, this is what I'm talking about. And then of course you can go on throughout, but don't just assume, even if it's a scientific or technical presentation, that everybody in that room understands what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely. So the final question I'm going to ask you all is to give some advice as far as a book you've read or some podcasts that you listen to, or there's some LinkedIn classes that you would recommend to improve communication skills. Ricky, I'll start with you.
Well, I think one podcast that I would recommend, it's actually my friend. Her name is Tara, and she has a podcast. And I don't want to give and once again, communication, don't want to give the wrong name for it, but her name is Dr. Tara, and I think it's Talk with Dr. Tara. But she really talks about communication for women in Fortune 500 companies. She used to work for a Fortune 500 company and was laid off, of course, during the pandemic. And she really kind of just talks to women just about how navigating her new life in, just trying to find out things, how to present herself, communication skills to present herself, to reinvent herself, to reimagine how she's going to be. So that's one of my favorite podcasts. So
that's great. That's great. Who else? Catherine?
Sure. One book that's great for clear communications is Made to Stick. It's an easy read. What makes the language you use memorable? And then the new one I'm reading is called Essentialism, it's called The Power of Essentialism, The Power of Less. It's a book. But the premise is do what you're good at relentlessly.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And shed the stuff that is not in your pure sweet spot.
That's great. Great. Beth?
Yeah, I'll pop into the chat here. There's a great podcast for those on the call who are academics like me. It's called Academes, and it's a podcast by two academic women, and it covers a lot. It covers communication and a lot of the communication that I think women in academia spend a lot of time, which isn't necessarily a presentation, but it's how do you phrase this email in a way to your male boss who is not going to take it in the wrong way. It's a lot of that hidden curriculum communication skills that women in academia have to learn to survive, and they cover a lot of that in their episode. So I really enjoy it. It's just a great refreshing take on academic life as a woman, and so I highly recommend that for those who are interested in that specific area.
That's great. Shaylee?
So I don't have a specific podcast or book, but one thing I find helpful for myself is attending events like this, or I try to just attend webinars throughout the year on communications or digital communications. But another thing in my career that I have found that helps is attending networking events, even if I'm uncomfortable. Because it kind of forces you to have conversations with people about your business, about your line of work. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. So I've kind of found that even if it's just asking people in the community to do one-on-one lunch or coffee, I know that's not the class or podcast, but just getting in those uncomfortable situations, because the more you do it, then it's just not uncomfortable anymore.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Cheryl?
Well, I'm going to be self-promoting here, but a podcast that my partner in crime and I did for the last 5 years or so, Entrepreneurially Thinking. We actually won awards from the regional chamber. We were the podcast that was selected with Launch Code in their inaugural awards for this podcast. And it was Chrissy Maxfield and myself. And we would interview different innovators from different backgrounds, from the startup community to science to, theater, everything. And the whole idea was to really expose what folks were doing in starting companies. And especially we were highlighting women, minorities that were starting companies in our region and how they were doing it differently. And our tagline was stepping outside of your comfort zone. Because one of the things that we talked about is that, a lot of people think that in order to be, first of all, the word entrepreneur is really linked to a white male starting a company. And most business owners that are women or minorities don't see themselves as entrepreneurs. The language they use is small business owners. So what we want to show is there are entrepreneurs in our community that's doing some phenomenal companies that they're developing. We still have the content out there that's still live on the platform. And there's several, we've had over hundreds of interviews. We had over, I think it was by the time we stopped recording in January of this year, we had over 50,000 folks that were engaging in the podcast. So I want to encourage you. And it was fun. It was so much fun because we would tell people that we were interviewed. Dena's been on our podcast. We've had people on the podcast. And we would tell folks, this is something like, if you were in a bar, we just didn't have the wine. It was like, this is a conversation that we're having. It's a really natural conversation, going back to authenticity, and getting to the questions that if you were sitting on the next bar stool, you would ask these questions as well. So I would encourage you all to listen to it. It's called Entrepreneurially Thinking, and it was fun. It had a great run.
Well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but I have to say this has been so much fun. And I appreciate all of your insight and your advice. And I just want to let the participants know we'll be sending out a follow-up email tomorrow with the link to this recording, this event, and it will also include a lot of the recommendations on books and podcasts. So I know somebody said they were driving. Okay, so in the chat box, and so you'll get all that information tomorrow. And then I also want to encourage you to check our website or our newsletter. We will be having one final WISER event in November, and we'll be sending information out for that event. But again, thank you, ladies, so much for taking the time to be here today. And thank you to all the participants, and just everyone have a wonderful day, and we'll be sending out that email. So
great questions. Thanks to the audience. That was so fun.
Thanks, Dena. Great seeing everybody too.
Bye, you ladies.
Everybody. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.